Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Focus In, where we discuss photography and technology. And I'm your host, Ethan. And today, I present you with an interesting question that you will probably not have the answer to. Why am I so dang obsessed with Japan? Like others, I've always wanted to go to Japan, but is it because everybody is just going? Is it because it just looks good? To be comically honest with you, I just want really good street shots. I'm not even gonna lie about it. But Japan has had a huge hand in the camera market for years now. Since basically the dawn of time for cameras. Oh, I take that back. Not the dawn of time, but the three major manufacturers of cameras, Nikon, Canon, Sony, they've been in the market for a very, very long time. And I actually have an episode where I discuss the history of them. But a thing about Japan is that it just makes you want to take pictures and it has so much to offer. But first, let's back up. Where did I even get this question from? I remember one time I was having a family event, and a very good, close, and good family friend of ours asked me why am I so obsessed with going to Japan. He mentioned his dislikes for the country, and he basically said that Japan just isn't worth it. Everybody always goes there, so what's the point? And honestly, I get it because there's a lot of places where it's just a tourist hotspot. Some people will say, "Oh, place," and then people will say, "Place Japan," and people will just freak out about it. People treat Japan as if it's this holy grail. But one thing about Japan is that its culture just allows for photography. And like I mentioned earlier, Japan just makes you want to take photos. There's just so many things. And one thing I want to excel in regards to photography is my street photography. It's always something I've liked and enjoyed. I've always liked just seeing I wouldn't say ambient nature, but just seeing people not posed up for a portrait shot, just seeing people in the raw, natural environment. I think that's a really cool shot to take or shots to take. And I just enjoyed so much. Things such as crowds in Japan, while as a tourist, yes, it is going to be very hectic to go through. I think it does add to the atmosphere of Japan and just shows you the liveliness of it. Shrines and fashion are also huge subjects to take in Japan, which is understandable. I mean, almost every turn you take, I can almost imagine there's a shrine. Almost every photography vlog I watch that's based in Japan has a shrine in some way, shape, or form. So honestly, I can't really blame them. Fashion is also a thing that a lot of people tend to enjoy. A lot of people have a lot of respect for the kimonos that the Japanese citizens wear, which I find also interesting. They always have cool designs and they always have a huge story to tell behind them. It's not just some cool dress, it's a lot of cultural relevance behind it. And honestly, I respect it a lot. But there's this photographer named Daido Moriyama. He said a way that he likes to discover photography is by reading magazines and books. There's a book called Japanese Photography Magazines 1880s to 1980s. It shows things such as families, portraits, culture, and creative shots done by many photographers of that time, which I think is really cool. I think the fact that you're able to take pictures not just during that time, but considering a lot of things that are happening between 1880 and 1980, you get to see basically a compilation of those photographers. I believe I saw the book going for $100, which in my opinion is a really good price because it's like 500 pages. And I think if you're in like a photographer's block or any sort of artist block, I think that would be really good to pick up. But another thing about the book that I like, well, from what I've seen so far, the family shots and how there's creative shots of just setting up certain things, you get to see a lot of aspects of Japan. It's not just one thing. There's a page where it showed a picture of soldiers, I believe, standing in line. It kind of shows the uniformity. I don't even think that's a word, but just basically how uniform Japan is compared to a lot of other countries. I've always had a saying, and I don't think I'm the first person to say this, so I'll give credit to whoever said it first. But I believe you should work with what you have, right? I've always said that, and I'm pretty sure I mentioned it in past episodes, but I'm always a firm believer in that. And I think that these photographers in this book, they really, they're really the ones to embody that, or at least one of the people to embody that saying. They use what they have, and they're able to take pictures, even by today's standards are really good. I think that even as a photographer, just by going to Japan, I'm not just going there to take pictures just for the fun of it or just for the heck of it. I'm going there because I believe I wanted to carry on these photographers' legacy. I want to be able to take pictures that people can resonate with and understand. I do believe that I can do better. So things such as my composition and how I do certain shots. I mean, there's a lot of people who say, "Oh, your shots are really good," and I'm like, "Yeah, thanks," but they could always be better. But I feel as if that's just the creative side of me talking, and I think a lot of people in the creative space can relate to that. You always put out your quote unquote best work, but you always see the flaws in it, which is also a thing as a photographer that really it's a pain in the butt. It's a good and a bad thing at the same time. I consider a necessary evil, if you will, because you take a shot and you're like, okay, this looks really good, but here's what I could do better, and you do better, and then you still find things that you could do better on. So I think that by going to Japan one of these days, I can expand my love for street photography, and it's not just Japan that I want to go to. I have other places like London and Paris. I mean, the usual places. I just want to travel and take pictures, honestly, and hopefully maybe become a professional photographer and get signed by a company. Who knows? But like I mentioned, Japan just allows you to take pictures there. It's kind of hard to not take pictures there and not have them come out in an aesthetic way or in just a super cool way. I think the street shots will be really cool because you just have different parts of Japan. You have like the techno side of it, well, not techno, but the more modern side of it, like Tokyo and Akihabara, and then you have the more calm places like Hiroshima and Kyoto. Well, I think is more calm, but I wouldn't know until I go. But those are places that definitely I would want to travel to because honestly, you just can't beat it. I'm not gonna lie about it. What I feel as if, but to answer my question, why I think I'm so obsessed with Japan as a photographer is because of its culture. I mentioned it earlier, but to sum it up, I feel as if with the culture and everything that Japan has to offer, it's kind of hard to not take pictures of it. Even if you're not into certain types of photography, just there's just something that's always there for you to take pictures of. Being a photographer, just creative in any way, shape, or form, there's just so many things that you can take pictures of. It's just endless, and it's just up to your imagination to determine, hey, is this what I want to take a picture of today? Hey, I want to try something new. I think that's one of the best things about being a creative person and being able to do what you want to do because of the fact that you have your free roam. People always say you always have a blank canvas. Now put some colors on it. You give 15 different people a blank canvas, you get 15 different results. And I think that's the beauty of art in general. And I can also say that for photography. You give 15 people the same camera, you get 15 different photos. And I think that even by having limitations such as film and roll, I think those add on to the creativity because you're so limited. But I also think that with being a photographer in Japan or going to Japan to do photography, like I said, you end up just appreciating the culture for what Japan is, of how uniform they are and what they do. And it's just something it's hard to not appreciate, honestly. And there's other countries where I mentioned earlier that I want to go to, like London, Paris, Amsterdam, and all these places. I want to go and take pictures there because I want to explore the world. And I think that by going to Japan, it'll allow me to just get a better world view. Because there are times where I do feel like I'm stuck in the box. Things such as just being in the house all the time, not going a lot of places. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love sleeping, but there are times where I just want to get up and get out there, and do stuff. But I do feel as if that by taking street shots, they just help to emphasize the culture of Japan and what it is and what it stands for. You get to see people in their raw and natural things. You get to appreciate people. In a weird way for me, it helps me to appreciate mom and pop shops. To basically elaborate on that, you basically have shops that aren't really mainstream or aren't really like retail and stuff like that, but they offer us things where it's just a calm little vibe. It doesn't have that corporate feel to it. You go in and you just say, "Hey, how you doing?" And I would imagine that's how it go in Japan, but I would never know until I go. But one of these days, and I'm definitely going to make an episode on that. But I feel as if, like I said, you get to understand just the culture of Japan and what it stands for. I think it's going to be an amazing thing. I really do. So I think that answers my question. But I still stand by the fact that I'm being completely honest. I really just want to take really good street shots. And I feel as if Japan is the best place to start with that. I did want to go to New York to do street shots at first, and I still do, don't get me wrong. But that's in the works. But I can't spoil that yet. I definitely want to go and see And I definitely want to hit up New York first before I go to Japan, just to practice my street shots. I don't know if I said this before, but I'll say it now. I always thought as New York as the American version of Japan, and Japan as the Japanese version of New York. They kind of have a lot of similarities, like different boroughs, and you have different cities in Japan. But I would never know because I've never been. So, well, I've never been to Japan. I definitely want to hit up New York and be able to get those shots and be able to test my photography. And eventually, I want to save up and get a new camera. I've been thinking about getting to Sony cameras. Well, not just because it's Japanese, but just because I think they're cool. And I think for a price point, they last long. But that's basically my thoughts. And that's my answer to the question, why am I so darn obsessed with Japan as a photographer? This week's episode was brought to you by my wonderful team here at Focus In. I would like to shout out to my writer and editor. They do an amazing job every week, and their work shouldn't go unnoticed. Don't forget to follow my page on Twitter and Twitter/X and Instagram. I post my photography there bi-weekly, so please support me. Also, don't forget to share the podcast with family and friends so we can have a greater outreach. Until next time, focus in. All right, so PS, this is a little edit afterwards. I do plan to start posting my podcast on YouTube. I just need to get the process of that in. It's easy, but I'm gonna start posting on YouTube because it provides a greater reach for a lot of people. Not everybody really has Spotify, which is understandable. But I've gotten many tips to post on YouTube, so I'll do that and have it there. This will be the first episode to post on YouTube, so looking forward to it. All right then. Until next time, focus in.